In our industrial world, there's this constant push and pull, right? We want progress, but we also, want to breathe clean air. So, how do we actually make sure the rules are being followed? Well, it turns out there's a very specific playbook for that, and we're about to take a look inside.
It's a fundamental question, isn't it? You see a factory or a plant, and it's just natural to wonder what's actually in that smoke? And maybe more importantly, who's keeping track of it all?
Well, in Alberta, it's not just guesswork. The answer is found inside this document called the Air Monitoring Directive. Now, don't let the name fool you. It sounds kind of dry, right? But think of it less like a dusty government file and more like a high-stakes rulebook for keeping industry accountable.
So, here's what we're going to cover. We'll look at what this rulebook actually is, who's responsible for the reporting, and what that process looks like. Then, we'll get into the big one, how we know the data is honest, what happens when rules get broken, and finally, why any of this really matters to you and me.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. This directive, it's not just about filling out forms. It's a whole blueprint, and it's designed from the ground up to make sure the information we get about our air is consistent, it's reliable, and ultimately that it's useful.
So, what's the whole point of this thing? Well, it's really all about creating a level playing field. It sets the absolute minimums everyone has to meet. It standardizes all the reports so you can actually compare apples to apples. It creates strict deadlines to keep the information flowing, and it spells out exactly how to submit everything. In short, it gets everyone speaking the same language.
Okay, so who are the key players in this whole system? Who's actually on the hook for collecting and reporting all this data? Turns out, the directive splits them into two main groups.
On one side, you have the industrial operations. We're talking factories, facilities, plants. They have to monitor and report on what's coming directly out of their own stacks. Then, on the other side, you have what are called Alberta Airsheds. These are nonprofit groups that monitor the ambient air. That's the general air that we all breathe in a community. So you have one group reporting on itself and another reporting on our shared environment.
So what does this reporting actually look like in practice? It's not just one massive data dump at the end of the year. No, it's way more interesting. Think of it more like a regular series of health checkups for the environment, where each checkup gets a little more detailed. It all kicks off with these frequent check-ins, monthly or quarterly reports that give a quick summary and flag any immediate issues. Then, once a year, you get the big physical, a really comprehensive annual report that looks at the whole year's trends. And finally, there's the annual emissions inventory. This is a super detailed accounting of every single thing released into the air. And of course, all of this gets sent to the provincial regulator to be checked over. And that inventory gets really specific. It makes a key distinction between a point source, which is what you'd probably picture like a single identifiable smokestack, and a non-point source. This is the stuff that's more spread out. Think about dust from a road or tiny hard-to-spot leaks from equipment. The crucial part is the rules demand they account for both, which gives a much more complete picture of an operation's true impact.
Okay, this brings us to the elephant in the room. The question you're probably all thinking right now. If industry is reporting on itself, how on earth can we trust the data? Well, the directive actually has several layers of verification built right in to tackle that trust factor. The first layer is pretty powerful. Every single report, every single one, has to have a cover letter with this exact statement on it. A real person, a senior official at the company, has to sign their name to it, personally certifying that the data is complete and accurate. This isn't just ticking a box. It's a formal, personal declaration of responsibility. A personal signature is a big deal, but the system doesn't just run on trust alone. It requires technical audits to make sure the equipment itself is telling the truth. Let's look at two of the key ways they do that. First up is something with a fancy acronym, RADA. It stands for Relative Accuracy Test Audit. This is basically a direct reality check. An independent team comes in with their own highly accurate certified monitor and runs it right beside the facility's monitor. Then they compare the numbers. If the company's equipment is out of whack, the RADA is going to find it. The other key check is called a CGA, or Cylinder Gas Audit. Honestly, the best way to picture this is to think about checking a scale. You put a certified 10-pound weight on it to see if it reads 10 pounds, right? It's the same idea here. They run a canister of gas with a precisely known concentration through the monitor. If the monitor doesn't read the correct value, you know it's not calibrated properly. It's a simple but really effective check.
So we've got the rules and we've got the checks to make sure the data is good. But what happens when something actually goes wrong? What happens when a limit is crossed and a rule is broken?
The directive is absolutely 100% clear on this. Any violation, whether you go over a limit, your equipment breaks down, anything, it has to be reported to the regulator immediately. There's no waiting around, no grace period. The alarm bell has to be rung right away.
And when we say rules, we mean they are precise, down to the decimal point. Just take a look at this example from the directive. If the air quality limit is 300, a reading of 299.4 is okay. A reading of exactly 300 is also okay. But because of specific rounding rules, a reading of 300.4, that officially becomes an exceedance and it has to be reported immediately. The whole system is built on that kind of black and white precision.
Okay, we have been deep in the weeds here. I know, RADAs, CGAs, exceedances, but it is so important to pull back and connect all of this paperwork to why it matters in the real world, why it matters for public health.
So when you put it all together, what do you get? Well, first, you get transparency. This system creates this massive public database on our air quality. Second, you get accountability. You can't enforce rules without hard numbers. Third, all this data fuels smarter decisions, everything from government policy to public health advisories. And all of that ladders up to the ultimate goal, protecting public health by carefully managing what goes into the air we all share.
It's a complex system, no doubt about it. It's demanding, but it's all designed to replace ambiguity with hard data. And that leaves us with a final question to chew on. Is this kind of rigorous, data-driven blueprint the standard we should be aiming for everywhere?